Hi guys again, here Gabby. I have something to say that is most software failures are not technical. They are business understanding failures. Okay, so we have this pattern DDD, this architecture style DDD, where DDD exists to solve that by forcing your code to speak the business language. So today we are going to talk about DDD in microservices in .NET ecosystem. To me, DDD, that stands for domain-driven design, is a way of designing software by focusing on the business and its language. And the goal is to build a model code that actually represents that domain. Okay, so instead of writing generic crude code, we design around the business concept, the business rules, and the real meaning. Okay, the key core is there. We focus on the business side and its language. We design the models around that represent the business domain concepts. Okay, so DDD is a big toolbox. Okay, in microservices, we apply what we need most, and that, for example, we can talk about a series of concepts like ubiquitous language, bounded context, entities, value object with its own invariants, separating domain from infrastructure, and so on. Going for the first one, ubiquitous language, we can talk about what does this mean? This means that it's the business and the code. So when the business says payment, redemption, points, customer, I don't translate that into random technical names. Okay, the language code stays consistent everywhere. Where is code? Where is APIs? Where is event? Where is documentation? If the language drift, the system can become ambiguous. So, going to the second rule, the bounded context. The bounded context. Each microservice has its own model and its own data owner. Okay, so each service owns its meaning and its data. Okay, that's another key concept for the microservices that we should have in concerns. Okay, its own model, its own data owner, its own relationship, and its own reason of existing as a microservices. And that DDD helps microservices. Third one, entities, value objects, and its invariants. The entities represent the things with identity over time. The value objects, on the other hand, represent the concepts defined by their values. Okay? And both the entire entities and value objects must enforce business rules. Invariants, so invariant states cannot exist. Okay? If an invariant are not enforced in the model, they leak into random places like controllers, handlers, or database logic. That's a key concept. On the other hand, separating domains from infrastructure, talking about persistent ignorance, is where we separate correctly the domain from infrastructure. This is what people usually call persistent ignorance. The domain model should not care how it's stored. The domain model is the domain model, nothing more. We can store it and we can manipulate it and we can do other stuff, but in other layer, not in the domain layer. Okay, we do it there in the infrastructure, for example. Talking about that in the domain, as we said in other videos, the entity framework core should not exist, should not be there. That should be a concern of the infrastructure layer. No entity framework details inside domain object, no persistent concerns leaking into business rules. The business rules, the business, the domain, the entities, the value object should reside only in the domain side. It should be pure and concrete. Okay? So, how we can apply bounded context in microservices? I think we can bound the microservices with the bounded context, that is the model, its database, and its language. Okay? The bounded context is the boundary of all the microservice, because the moment we share the entities, we are also share meaning, and we create couple between services, and we don't want that. Okay? So how the services integrate without sharing entities? What happens if another service needs something? We expose it through a contract, through an API contract or an event, and the other service adapts that data into its own model. So each service stays independent with its own bounded context. So the result of DDD that we should concern is that we get clear systems, less coupling, better ownership boundaries, and code that match real business. Okay? And the big win is the business and the code speak the same language. That's the core of DDD. The domain should explicitly tell about what the business is all about. It's the business itself, the modeling, the language, the name. Okay? Thank you so much. I hope you like the video. See you next time.